Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger is launching a new political action committee to challenge his party's support of former President Trump. Kinzinger announced the PAC called Country First in a video message yesterday. He said that the GOP has, quote, lost its way, and added that the future of the party is on the line. Dan Eberhart is with us now to talk a little bit more about GOP funding. Dan is a Republican donor and the CEO of Canary USA, an oil field services company. He's also the author of Switching Gears, the petroleum-powered electric car. That's a whole mouthful. You got quite an intro there, but I'm really glad that you're joining us right now.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get into it. In an interview over the weekend, Congressman Kinzinger spoke about his motivation for launching the Political Action Committee. I want to play some of that sound for you, and then we'll talk afterwards.
Sure.
And my goal in launching countryfirst.com with the number one is just to say, look, let's take a look at the last 4 years, how far we have come in a bad way, how backwards looking we are, how much we peddle darkness and division. And that's not the party I ever signed up for, and I think most Republicans didn't sign up for that.
Okay, for many, it seems like there is a divide within the Republican Party. I want to ask you if you see that, and then, what sort of impact you think that will have on donors. We've already seen some corporate donors pull back, but what do you think the longer-term implications will be when it comes to people deciding where to put their money?
Well, I think that this problem, this dilemma, is a melting ice cube. And I will say that, this quarter, the first quarter after an election, is really the quarter that matters the least in terms of fundraising. Not that it doesn't matter, but it matters the least in terms of the cycle and where we're going. Right now, Republicans are, focused on kind of a rebuilding year and a circular firing squad. People are trying to have the Republican Party they want, not the Republican Party that kind of existed with Trump at its head. And so you're seeing all this dilemma right now. What we just said with the congressman, also, what's going on between Liz Cheney and the caucus and Matt Gaetz specifically. And there's this whole thing about, is the direction of the party going to continue in the direction of Trump or not? And this push and pull, several of the state parties, Arizona, Oregon, others are, censuring congressmen that voted to impeach Trump. And there's just a bunch of dilemma going on in the Republican Party. I think, though, this is not how we, can best oppose Biden's policies and try to hold the Democrats accountable for what I think is overreach already, and for, recruiting the best candidates so that we can be victorious in the midterms in 2022 and hopefully take the House back. All this goes against that purpose. Again, I think that people want the Republican Party they think should exist in their mind, not the Republican Party that exists. And I think that it all puts us a little bit further away from winning.
As you know, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy met with former President Trump last week, and the two discussed Republican efforts to win back the House in 2022. The question, of course, is, does the former president play a role in that election? Because, as you say, we know that, I had this moment when we were talking about, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the conspiracy theories that she's espoused, which have real-world ramifications. One mother who lost her son in the Parkland shootings spoke to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who in the past on her social media had indicated that she didn't believe that those shootings had happened. She believed that they were false flag attacks. I'm not going to repeat all her conspiracy theories here on the air, but for that mom and for the other parents who lost children during that horrific day, it's a real disrespect and a real slap in the face to have a member of Congress talking about these things. And yet you don't get a lot of Republicans coming out and vociferously saying that they don't agree with her. You get folks like Kevin McCarthy, who went to kiss the ring down at Mar-a-Lago, giving her a committee assignment. So there are some people, I'm not a politician, I'm not a political reporter or an analyst, but you hear a lot of people saying there's a fight for the soul of the Republican Party. My question is there really? Because it sounds like Republicans are happy to have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene in the party. She raised $1.5 million for it.
Oh, I don't think a lot of Republicans are happy at all. Look, I think this all goes back to, are we going to go after a Reagan philosophy or a Barry Goldwater philosophy? Do we want to be, further to the right and purists, avoid the center, and are willing to lose elections to do that, or do we want to be a big tent party like Reagan and allow, a lot of different divergent voices? And I don't agree with what Congressman Greene has said in the least, but do we want to allow, room for Liz Cheney to vote for impeachment against Trump if she's voting her conscience and trying to have that profile and courage? I think the better path is a path, Ronald Reagan espoused, and let's be a big tent party. But, Leader McCarthy and others really have this problem of, they don't want to be primaried, and Leader McCarthy doesn't want his fellow flock to be primaried. And so that's going to allow Trump to keep a base and a toehold is too small of a word, but a very strong presence in the party. Trump has a huge amount of money, a megaphone. He can hold rallies for people in 2022 and get people's attention. And so the Trump very much still has his hand around the heart of this party, and people are going to have to deal with that one way or the other. And so there's really a tortured, fractious situation right now where people like McCarthy, people like McConnell have got to figure out, Trump's populist base, we need them in the party absolutely to win elections, and we don't want to lose those folks, and we want to speak for those folks. But we also need to speak for the folks on the center right that are tired of division, tired of hatred, tired of this angry rhetoric, and really just want, slightly prefer conservative philosophy, but don't want all the baggage that comes with it. And so there is absolutely a fight for the soul of what's going on right now. Again, I think the best path forward is Reagan's idea of a Big Ten approach and really focus on being the loyal opposition to Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress and calling out Democratic overreach, which I think is already happening. And that should be the focus. But unfortunately, we're acting very much like it's a rebuilding year, and we're hosting a bunch of circular firing squads, trying to make the party more pure and more like Barry Goldwater, and keep and maintain as much of the Trump ice cube as we can. I think that's a recipe for success ultimately.
I think, Dan, it's sort of difficult to determine how much of the Trump base is made up of, what you're sort of describing as populist supporters of Donald Trump. We talk about Congresswoman Green. I mean, in her section of Georgia, she won. She won because people voted for her. The New York Times analyzed new Federal Election Commission filings, and they found that former President Trump raised more than $255 million in the weeks following his election loss to President Biden.
Amazing.
A lot of those people are going to be making small donations. So we're not talking about, big ticket people, though I'm sure there were some big checks being cut. So it's a lot of people making small donations, and probably they knew that their money was going to be spent on these frivolous lawsuits that were going to go nowhere about the election being, fraudulently taken from Donald Trump. I mean, to me, that says that perhaps there are a lot of believers, if you will, within the Republican Party. And so then I have to ask you, is this a party built to cater to the needs of the supporters, or is it a party that is catering to the needs of, I don't know, people who are maybe, kind of thinking back to a different time, that is just not the time that we're living in now?
We absolutely have spent 4 years remaking the party in the mold of Donald Trump. And so, and ultimately, though, we lost the House, we lost the Senate, we lost the presidency. So it's really kind of a conflicting battleground of where we go from here. But I will say this, to get under the hood a little bit in the fundraising, in terms of small dollar donors in the Republican Party, they're all Trumps. The party is very weak on small dollar donors outside of President Trump, and it's actually one of President Trump's strengths. So, I think from a fundraising perspective, what he did after his election loss was a magnificent lift in terms of how much he raised and the cash he has on hand. And I think it will make him very relevant in 2022 and 2024 should he want to be. And so the party has really got to figure out the path forward with Trump or around Trump. But I don't really see a path around Trump with his name ID, his megaphone, his ability to hold rallies. No one wants to be primary. No one wants a Trump-backed primary opponent in the midterms. And so this makes Trump very, very relevant. And those that were, kind of hoping that after this loss he would fade away, go away, after the Capitol Hill riots that he would be discredited and irrelevant, that after this impeachment he would be irrelevant, are really in for a very bumpy ride ahead. I think that, Trump is not going to be quiet in the mold of George W. Bush and Donald Trump. I fully expect, I've been, talking to people behind the scenes very close to him. I fully expect after this impeachment trial that he's going to get right back out there in terms of letting the public know what he thinks about this issue or this person and his grievances, et cetera. He's not going to be quiet in the mold of Obama and George W. Bush. And so he's going to be very, very relevant in the midterms.
So then, Dan, I guess that then it strikes me that the Republican Party is headed to this notion where they coalesce around former President Trump. I mean, because it is as a Republican, is it strange to you to see Liz Cheney being attacked for her bona fides?
Absolutely.
Is it strange to you to see the wife of the late Senator John McCain, Cindy McCain, being attacked? I know she voted for Joe Biden. I know she
endorsed Biden.
I get that. I get that.
I have issues with that.
Sure, you have issues with that, but should she be censured for voting? I mean, Colin Powell, all these people who are Republicans. I mean, based on your notions of the Republican Party, you mentioned Ronald Reagan, one of our great presidents. I mean, there are a lot of people who see themselves in the mold of a Reagan Republican, and I would guess that Liz Cheney is one of those Republicans. I would guess that Cindy McCain and Colin Powell see themselves in the as a Reagan Republican.
Look,
but they're the ones being. Sorry, I just want to say, Dan, they're the ones being censured. You're not seeing the censured. You're not seeing Republicans who try to challenge the election and disenfranchise 80 million voters, or at least the voters in some of those swing states like Pennsylvania and Arizona. You're not seeing those Republicans being censured. You're seeing the ones like Liz Cheney who are Republicans being censured.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've spent time with Liz Cheney on multiple occasions, and I've donated to her in the past and raised money for her. Look, she's a staunch conservative. I think she just had a profiles in courage moment and said, look, these riots were enough is enough, and I want to speak my mind on it. And I think that she's done that. She's invited a primary challenge. Gates and Donald Trump Jr. came to speak out in Wyoming last week, caused an enormous amount of controversy in the state. So I think that she did it, and I think she's going to pay a personal and a political cost for that. But ultimately, she's a staunch conservative, and I think that the circular firing squad around her really makes no sense. We need to focus on winning elections. We need to focus on being a Big Ten party, like Reagan said. And this is how we're going to come back from the wilderness and potentially take the House back in 2022, which I think we have a very good shot at. And to get, bump Mitch McConnell's flock up 1 or 2, 3 seats in the next cycle to get control of the Senate. I think both of these things are very possible given historical trends, given what we were able to accomplish in 2020 while still losing the presidency. But we've got to have a good recruiting class. We've got to give people reasons to be Republicans, and we need to be a Big Tent party and not focus on shooting ourselves in the foot. And right now, I think a lot of people are upset about the presidential loss, and you have this, battlefield between the Trump populace and the establishment Republicans, and this is really driving us deeper into the minority and deeper on defense. And we're really giving Joe Biden and his liberal agenda way too much room, and not enough focus and loyal opposition right now, in my opinion.
So just to kind of to clarify your take on it, you believe that the future of the Republican Party, if it is going to survive, is to be more attractive to so it will survive, is to be more attractive to more people, right? So yes. More people Absolutely. Who are willing to kind of put an R on their chest, and a move towards more traditionally conservative ideals as opposed to what we're seeing with Donald Trump. Because when I brought up the amount of money that he raised, it wasn't just that he's, I see each of those dollars, anyone who's willing to sort of separate themselves from their hard-earned dollar bill as, being supportive of the Trumpist version of the Republican Party. So what I'm kind of asking you is, if there's people within the party that support Trump that are not as disturbed as you might think with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, then is this what the party is? And you're arguing it's not really what the party is. So I'm saying, well, what's the proof that the Republican Party as it is today is actually still the party of Reagan or other more traditionally conservative Republicans, and not what it looks like right now?
I'm saying it should aspire to be that, and I think that's the path back to the majority. That's what I'm saying. But then I'm also saying that it's going to be really hard to do that, and that Trump has a lock on the party with his name ID, his base, his small dollar fundraising, his cash on hand numbers. All of this points to we're going to spend 2021 focused on defense, focused on members, trying to avoid primaries, and the circular firing squad, a la Liz Cheney and what's happened to her, unfortunately. And this is going to pull us further back in the minority and put us more on defense than we should be, instead of being on the offense against Joe Biden's liberal policies and Nancy Pelosi's overreach. That's my point.
All right. Well, as we've been saying, Dan, as you know, all of the Republicans are meeting later this week. I understand that on the agenda item, they are going to be discussing Congresswoman Green. So we'll see. I mean, I think, I said this earlier at the top of the show. We know that Senator Al Franken was forced to resign, essentially, for pictures that were taken long before he became a United States Senator, when he was actually a comedian. And he did so. And we know that Representative Katie Hill also resigned her office because she had engaged in an inappropriate relationship with somebody on her staff. We've seen members of Congress, resign because of some of the things that they have done. And some people applaud it and some people were angry about it. But it did happen. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I'm not taking a position either way, but there are some people who are calling for her to resign her seat, and there are others who are telling her to, hold firm. But it is interesting to see, it will be interesting to see how Republicans treat some of the things that she has said and some of the things that she has done, which, have some real life ramifications, real world ramifications. These conspiracy theories do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Dan, always great to talk to you, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me back.